The Baki top 10 strongest has changed many times over the years, with the rise and fall of many fighters and even some getting next level redemption. Many characters and changes past the anime have occurred. For reference, since Yujiro vs Baki, there's been almost 400 chapters in the manga, and it is still ongoing, with the author confirming in recent interviews that he has no plans on ending the story. Furthermore, there is various side manga in the universe that expands on certain characters and other crazy events. Now, before I go over the top 10, I have to give mention to these two, who most likely belong in this ranking, but I can't include them for various reasons. First is Isekai Retsu, the one from this side manga, which yes is official and involves Retsu as an overpowered isekai protagonist, featuring some of the best feats we've ever seen in the Baki universe, him pretty much using everyone's crazy techniques, and honestly providing an argument that this version of Retsu is on Yujiro's level, or maybe even the strongest of all time in Baki. Apart from that, we have the super controversial Yujiro Hanma, who does have one of the best feats and unmatched aura in the only time he appeared in the main manga. We do have him mentioned in a moment in various side manga, but these don't really help his case at all. For what we do know, he's likely a monster and worthy of around the top 10, but to say with an absolute is only headcanon at this point. But this video on the mysterious Chad channel explains his entire story in great detail. Make sure to subscribe there for even more Baki content alongside here, but now let's get into the top 10. So the ranking from 1 to 9 is complete, but I have 4 characters right now fighting for the 10th spot. These include Kakukayo, Doppo Orochi, Goki, and Sukune. The arguments for the sumo boy connects to Jack's statement at the end of their fight, claiming that Sukune could have defeated him with this slam if he didn't take one of his fingers prior to the fight or wasn't already tired. Alongside the strategy Jack implemented to win that fight, we also have the fact that Sukune was still injured going into the rematch with Oliva, and even Baki, who defeated him in under 10 seconds to conclude that arc, proceeded to glaze the god of sumo, saying he was so strong Baki needed to do that. Well, yes, all of this is a little bit wacky, it still highlights Sukune as very impressive. However, that arc has concluded, and based on how it did end, I doubt Sukune will be returning to the story, at least anytime soon. Alongside the narrative of the current manga, Baki Rahan, the Jack arc, who is fighting everyone who have already been shown and confirmed to be getting stronger, which leaves us with these 3 now. Kaku, who hasn't had a fight since Yujiro, but remained kinda relevant via training characters like Katsumi and Retsu, highlighting how much he's respected and knowledge he wields as a martial artist. But with that said, he has not appeared since the Musashi arc, which was quite some time ago now. With Goki and Doppo being set up to fight current Jack Hanma in the future, and have maintained strength around one another throughout the entire series. Doppo has gotten better feats due to destroying KR, but Goki is more respected by the other fighters. For example, the likes of Motobe and Jack still refer to him as sensei, and when Doppo and Goki did fight in the Maximum Tournament, we had the Aiki Master come out on top. And since then, most people agree that these two belong next to each other in every ranking, with Goki slightly ahead. Additionally, we got this panel in the Ali Jr. arc comparing these 3, highlighting that from his perspective, Kaku, Doppo and Goki are around the same during this time. This is after Ali Jr. just lost against Doppo and Goki and watched the Kaku and Yujiro fight, where Ali Jr. was still impressive at this time, with all this not being disproven in any way since. Furthermore, the Karate and Kempo boy are part of the limited group to receive a beating from Demonback Yujiro, and while yes, The version of the ogre who faced Kaku was stronger due to the Yujiro growing in power daily statement, alongside natural power progression that occurs in most fighting series. We also have Doppo shown training in every arc of the manga, until the most recent one as well, something we have never gotten for Kaku since his defeat. However, while it's true that in the past are being negative about Kaku when it comes to his ranking and power, upon the Pickle arc coming in anime form, the previous statement about what he will do when fighting Pickle was revealed to be a mistranslation. For a long time, we thought Kaku's response to fighting the Dino Boy, the one who defeated Katsumi, would be to stop his heart, similar to what he did against Yujiro, conceding that he would be destroyed by Pickle without a doubt, and if he had to fight him he'll just give up rather than even trying, providing the argument that Katsumi had surpassed him even back here. But the anime revealed the real translation, or the most trusted one, as to this day we don't have official English translations for the manga outside of the Most Evil Death Row Inmates arc. But the anime confirmed that Kaku said, "I will try to stop his heart," highlighting that Kaku's approach or strategy to fighting Pickle would be to strike his heart, creating a very different statement with a different meaning, highlighting that Kaku is still relevant, alongside him knocking out an off-guard Motobe with a single strike in the Musashi arc, demonstrating his capabilities if required to fight. Additionally, Zhao Li, still to this day, is one of the most overpowered techniques we've ever seen in Baki. But with all this said, I personally doubt we'll see him fight again. Of course, I would love to see it, and yes, it was mentioned that him and Yujiro would have a rematch in the future. I personally just don't see it happening, putting his ranking in question, particularly if he has not improved since the Yujiro fight, which for reference occurred in 2005 for the manga. When it comes to Goki, he's had impressive showing throughout all of Baki, whether it be against Musashi Miyamoto, various sumo goons, or just being respected as a fighter. However, him improving as a martial artist isn't really known, at least compared to many others. And if I'm being honest, it seems like he has reached his peak and mostly relies on his overpowered martial art Aiki, which yes can dominate many characters, particularly those who focus on brute force, but others it would be hard to really pressure or give him a chance. Therefore, I do believe Doppo Orochi at this point deserves rank 10, but listen to this breakdown of his progression to understand why. Someone who's been around for the whole story and even before. Attacking Yujiro, fighting Yujiro, Goki, Ali Jr., Musashi and many more. However, a character with potentially the most misinformation out there, resulting in people throughout the Baki fandom fighting about which version of Doppo is the strongest. Today, that question will be answered with tons of support from the manga itself, including many reveals. Our boy is a wielder of the best defensive move in the whole series by miles. Like, you can't do better than this. Simple facts. Starting out with, why do people think young Doppo is the strongest? When he confronted Yujiro Hanma, he attacked him with a kick and Yujiro said this, "Nice kick, I think you broke my jaw." However, it is possible Yujiro was just trolling that scene, as with the final panel we don't really see any damage to his jaw or any sign that's really broken in my opinion, and Yujiro also took damage from the photo wrestler Doppo destroyed in that same chapter. Of course, this was due to him suppressing himself, but even when Doppo confronted him, Yujiro just stood there and took the blow. So it's kinda not really 100% confirmed or really something you should take to the absolute extremes. This happened in chapter 1 of Baki Gaiden Kenjin, a 5-chapter Doppo spin-off story. But the big thing that kinda debunks this straight away is later in the spin-off itself, we see Doppo training, with him saying he wants to become strong, so this version of Doppo just really can't be the strongest. We see and know most of the cast in Baki train, resulting in them to get progressively stronger, but a thing to take note is, at different rates. I'll talk more on this later on. A large amount of the fandom believe the Doppo who faced Yujiro in early Grapple Baki is his prime, thus the strongest version of him. This is for the following reasons. When they confronted each other, Yujiro talked about Doppo training, again debunking the Yujiro stuff, and that he could have ripped his heart apart. This is them just setting up their fight, by the way. The narrator later states that this may be the last year he can stay in his prime, including mentioning speed, strength, stuff like that. However, do take note, this is a dodgy Wildfang translation, but even while considering that statement, I can debunk it later on. Doppo also beating up base Yujiro, resulting in him to use his demon back. Doppo losing an eye in that fight, making it the last time he's actually used this ability in the series, a very strong defensive move. Him actually technically dying for a short span of time during that fight as well. However, we have many things to discuss that point to this version of Doppo not being the strongest. Let's begin. Him doing everything there is to become stronger, this is said during the Maximum Tournament, which is much later on during the first manga series Grapple Baki. Never being able to complete his fighting style until the Maximum Tournament. This information page was provided in New Grapple Baki, the second manga series in the franchise, at the start of the Death Row Convicts arc for context. This is also the only manga series that has an official English translation where this scan actually comes from, but it has very important things to discuss. Mentions his defeat to Yujiro and proceeds to say, Orochi style karate is still incomplete declared by Orochi, who continues his untiring quest for perfection. This quest led him to the Ultimate Fighters Tournament, meaning Maximum Tournament. During his fight with Goki, he finally showcased his perfected Orochi style karate form. We know he was defeated in that fight regardless, but the information page continues to state, the deciding factor was believed to be the slight difference in age. Those few additional years of experience gave the master the edge. So Goki being older is perhaps the reason he won against Doppo, potentially debunking the whole age thing and that skill is more important in this context. From there, he embarked on a journey to seek even greater strength, not for karate, not for the academy, but for himself. And we see him returning from this journey here in the Death Row Convicts arc. Much of this disproves the argument for Prime Doppo. We also got this as something extra, training once again. Characters are getting stronger throughout the series, that's why new antagonists get introduced, for of course the main cast, the stronger main cast to fight. However, people like Yujiro and Baki have been getting stronger to a higher degree. For example, we go from Baki being one-shot by Pickle to him clowning on him with techniques in the same arc. Yes, he still lost that fight, but that's for other reasons. So I hope all of this is enough for everyone to understand the might of current Doppo and the fact that every character has just been getting stronger. Now let's go over some of his power and abilities. Was able to cut Dorian's wire with the following specifications. Can continue fighting even with the following injuries, including when he even loses a hand. Pretty wild. He most likely has the brain activity, which is a similar ability to pre-initiative from the Kangenverse, as he's the one who explains Baki having it at 18 with an example or a demonstration of him potentially using it, so it's most likely the case. He was able to counter being under full hypnosis by Dorian with his fighting skill alone. Able to counter Musashi's imagination blades 3 times. Was able to remove the intent of his strike, with Goki claiming it's more important or dangerous than the speed of it. Seems to be an expert of the body and various pressure points. Jack also recently claims that karate techniques are supposed to be effective one-on-one against weapons and even against groups, perhaps against everything. So with that, Doppo Orochi is certified 10th place, but but again, you can make arguments for these other 3 if you want. Let me know down in the comments. Now, 9th place is Katsumi Orochi. He was introduced in the Maximum Tournament with a very decent amount of hype around him, mainly from the likes of Doppo Orochi being the one who's going to surpass him and just being built different in various ways. For example, at 5 years old, Katsumi was facing an elephant in a tug of war contest and doesn't seem to be outright losing in this battle. Also getting a little scene of him destroying the new Yashape at the start of the Maximum Tournament, just to build him up as one of the main characters opposing Baki during this tournament. And then to add on to this hype, he was actually able to defeat Hanayama in the Maximum Tournament. This wasn't an easy fight by any means, as expected from facing someone like Hanayama, with a lot of people arguing the only reason Katsumi won this fight is due to Hanayama's fighting style, which when reading the fight could very well be the case, but regardless, he was able to defeat him. Then when it came to his next main fight, he had Retsu, which destroyed him, who opposed him in pretty much every way possible at this point and demonstrated his superiority in their fight. However, some people in the fandom actually claim Katsumi was close to winning this fight. For an example, if he was able to land this blow before Retsu landed his attack, he may have actually won. But of course, that is stretching the story quite a bit, and if you look at the next arc with Retsu and Katsumi sparring, demonstrating once again that Retsu at this point in the story is the superior one. Bringing us to, I guess, the first downfall of Katsumi before his actual rise. The next time we see him is in the prisoner arc. This was okay, but honestly not the best for Katsumi. He kinda got clowned on by Dorian, but Dorian was a menace throughout the whole arc. He did give Doyle quite an insane beating, however, so that does add points to Katsumi. But as a whole, throughout the prisoner arc, I would say he's pretty neutral, doesn't get portrayed as some type of god, or doesn't get portrayed as absolute trash, nothing like that. From there, we have a decently long break from seeing him in the manga, until we finally arrive at the Pickle arc, with the Yujiro disrespecting scene, something very important for his growth. Let's go over it quickly. During the big Pickle meeting scene, Yujiro Hanma arrives and begins talking shit right away, calling everyone a bunch of pathetic losers, resulting in Katsumi to begin acting tough and tell Yujiro to repeat what he said. And then Yujiro just looks at him and says this: "No wonder why no one, even me, Baki, even your own father wants to fight seriously with you. Because you are reckless and unaware of the consequences," resulting in Katsumi to actually be stunned and just look at Doppo's face here from what Yujiro said. Low-key, Yujiro just spitting facts at this point. He continues to talk more shit about Katsumi, resulting in him to rage out and actually throw an attack at Yujiro, which of course, Doppo straight away looks down, he knows what's coming. Katsumi gets absolutely clowned on in this scene here. Yujiro proceeds to, have that whole interaction with Pickle, but this is Katsumi at the start of the Pickle arc, pretty much in the mud. However, this is also the scene that marks as the starting point for the most growth we've ever seen from Katsumi in the story. He becomes impacted greatly from the aftermath of Retsu's fight with Pickle, with Retsu losing one of his legs, continuing to train with Retsu, and even the likes of Kaku Kaio making an appearance to also help Katsumi with his training, getting all this preparation, mastering stuff that not even Kaku would be able to do, and once again reinstating how gifted Katsumi actually is, something that was highlighted in his initial introduction during the Maximum Tournament, but once again just a reminder of who Katsumi is, giving us his fight with Pickle now. This is where he was able to shine the most he ever has in the whole Baki story. He was able to perform much better against Pickle than the likes of Retsu did. However, this is Pickle we're talking about. He was defeated, and as a result, he lost his arm in this fight. However, that isn't the end of Katsumi. Yes, he lost his arm. As such, he didn't do anything throughout the Musashi arc, didn't even get a chance to actually fight Musashi. It was believed at this point that Katsumi had reached his peak, There's arguments to say he surpassed Retsu and surpassed Kaku during his Pickle fight, at least at his peak during that fight considering these panels on screen now. Take note, I'll be going over spoilers for more so recent stuff in the manga now. Subscribe for more Baki content, that's what I provide on the channel. So as we know, Retsu died in the Musashi arc by the hands of Musashi, which allowed Katsumi to actually get Retsu's arm in the Sumo arc, allowing him to combine his karate and Chinese Kempo together, and for Retsu to actually live on in the story through Katsumi as well, as we get to see throughout these scenes. When it comes to his sumo fight, he pretty much would have absolutely destroyed his opponent and may have actually killed him if he landed this attack. However, he didn't want to do that, but already demonstrated that once getting Retsu's arm, he's now reaching a degree of power we've never seen before. Also take note, the Retsu arm he actually got was from a much stronger Retsu compared to the Pickle arc, as prior to fighting Musashi, he also got training from Kaku, learning these super broken techniques. Even though Katsumi doesn't know them, Retsu's arm is able to take control on its own to some degree with the use of Chinese Kempo. So once Katsumi is able to fully combine these two together, he is going to be quite broken. And to actually see that, we already have a fight set up in the manga for the future of the story. The Jack arc is currently occurring, and he has called out pretty much most fighters, which actually includes Katsumi. So the current new and improved Jack versus the new and improved Katsumi will be a main fight we get to see sometime in the future of the Baki manga. Katsumi combining all these years of development alongside Retsu, and now even using Retsu's arm as an extension of his own power. It's going to be pretty hyped to see. Of course, I'm still on Jack's side and I believe he's going to win. However, I wouldn't put Katsumi on the lower end. I think we're finally going to get Katsumi shown as someone on the higher tiers of the Bakiverse. Someone definitely above the likes of Doppo and Goki for an example, as some people in the fandom still think Doppo is stronger than Katsumi. However, when you consider the narrative for Katsumi, this doesn't really make the most sense, especially if you read every fight and every interaction you've seen from Katsumi and Doppo in the series. The whole purpose of Katsumi is to surpass Doppo and be the new and improved Doppo. Then on top of that, to also bring forward Retsu and his legacy in the story as well. We even had Katsumi pretty much knock out Doppo in the Pickle arc as well as a little side thing, so Katsumi is above the likes of Doppo Orochi, especially now. You could even say that he is the strongest karate master in 500 years at only 21 years old. This was just stated during the Pickle arc for an example. But Katsumi should also be above Goki now as well, as prior to getting Retsu's arm, we actually got a scene of them two sparring with one another, and very clearly it showed Katsumi outplaying Goki to some degree. Yes, he almost fell to the ground, but he was able to land this kick on Goki and then pretty much started laughing. So one-armed Katsumi being able to outplay Goki to some degree is of course very impressive. Then add on top of that Retsu's arm and of course his potential as well. Now for Hanayama, he has a very different experience throughout Baki. He's introduced much earlier, losing his fight against a young Baki when he was also young, so it doesn't really mean too much. He also lost against Katsumi in the maximum tournament. This is more so due to his fighting style, and got knocked out by Garland outside of the tournament. Then his next fight is against Spec, which he was able to win high difficulty. But this is where Hanayama begins to rise. His next real fight or exchange is against Pickle, where they have pretty much a pushing or strength test, where Hanayama does very well and demonstrates his sheer monstrous power, with Baki also thinking about a match between Hanayama and Pickle before facing him like Oliva, which perhaps maybe puts Hanayama and Oliva on the same level from Baki's perspective, who knows. But then it continues to grow. We have the start of the Musashi arc, where Yujiro respects Hanayama to a great degree, revealing that Hanayama is like Yujiro, born to be strong. And then we have the whole controversial reveal about whether or not Hanayama trains. So the thing is, throughout the Musashi arc, we get panels demonstrating that he trains. However, some people argue various translations for this arc are incorrect and they more so mean Hanayama doesn't train. he more so naturally gets stronger. Regardless of what side you're on, something for sure is Hanayama is getting stronger and is much stronger in the Musashi arc than he has been previously, which is of course as expected. Every main character in Baki has continued to grow stronger, but the thing is, all of them to varying degrees, and it seems like Hanayama has got a huge buff during this arc, which is demonstrated when he actually faces Musashi, doing much better than a lot of the other characters, and actually having a situation where he could have actually killed Musashi. And you can even do comparisons to the likes of Pickle, where Hanayama performed better when it comes to his strength showings compared to Pickle, which is pretty insane, and this is definitely something very good for Hanayama. After that, all he did in the sumo arc was destroy one of the sumo fodders, someone who's very clearly much weaker than Sukune, who Oliva defeated, so it doesn't mean that much. And then in the most recent Baki manga, Baki Rahen, we got pretty much some unfortunate stuff for Hanayama. Him getting, I guess, knocked out by the returning character Hanada, and I guess a little exchange, not an all-out fight by any means. I've gone over what really happened here in many videos talking about Baki Rahen recent chapters if you want to check those out, but as a whole it doesn't mean too much. Hanayama got outplayed to a degree by Hanada's techniques, which isn't the best for him. However, shortly after that we have his rise again somewhat. He is the one to stop Jack and Pickle from fighting in the street, providing another pushing exchange between him and Pickle, which was great to see, and this being the first ever time Jack and Hanayama have interacted in the series, with the cyborg not even knowing who Hanayama was, which is absolutely wild, but already recognizes him as someone strong. And based on commentary from Hanayama and Tokigawa during the Jack vs Pickle rematch in the underground, which I'll be breaking down shortly, it's very likely that Hanayama is going to be the next person to fight Jack, or at the very least, they will be fighting at some point during this arc now, as originally he wasn't someone Jack called out like the others. Apart from all that, we have his side manga stuff, but pretty much just highlights his insane endurance with some cool feats, but it doesn't really mean too much. Something pretty interesting is that one of the arcade machines in Japan actually portrays a fight between the two and how it would kinda play out, which of course isn't canon by any means, but still pretty cool, and I would love to see this in real life at some point. Therefore, I think you can see why I have him at rank 8. He's somewhat inconsistent throughout the Baki series and can't lose against people weaker than him, but then out of nowhere will have insane performances against some of the stronger characters in the series. It's likely the case that Hanayama will be rising up in the ranks throughout the Jack arc, as I predict him versus the cyborg will be one of the closest fights, but his biggest downfall is his fighting style, which can allow weaker people to outright defeat him. Now rank 7 is Motobe, a very controversial character to some, so make sure to listen closely. Motobe is one of the most wild, strongest, and underrated characters ever introduced in Baki. Here is his story. Unlike many, he was introduced right at the start within the first 5 chapters of the manga, where we learn right away from the likes of Doppo Orochi that he's a legend, and if you're a follower of martial arts, I'm sure you've heard the name once or twice. A man who belongs nowhere, only continuing to pursue the ultimate form of combat, jujutsu, amongst many other things, and even has insane confidence in himself that he could take out Doppo Orochi in less than a minute. This is the mysterious figure known as Motobe we are introduced to around the start of the series. Apart from that, we see him already in a master training position with Baki at various points, likewise for various other characters, with some believing that this may be Gaia, someone who we see Motobe is a master of later on in the series, with some claiming that this could have been just a design change. It is in fact Gaia, but no official confirmation at any point in the series. But the main scene that I need to talk about from early Baki is when Motobe pulled up on Yujiro and we learn that he's been training for many years to take out the ogre, and had a pretty insane showing. First was him countering some of the ogre's attacks, which was very impressive, and most importantly, being recognized as someone the ogre needed to use the demon back against. A scene that was actually before the Yujiro and Doppo fight to conclude the introduction arc of the manga, something many believed was the first time the ogre used the demon back, but when he faced Motobe, he technically used it there first, showing how monstrous he was in the early parts of the series. Outside of that, we learn that he is pretty much the ultimate expert of various martial arts, becoming the main commentator or explainer dude for various things in the story, such as during the Doppo and Yujiro fight, and various other points, alongside being the ultimate glazer of Yujiro, as the one to reveal many things about the ogre, alongside Captain Stridum during the initial parts of the Baki manga. But after that, during the Maximum Tournament, this is where we have Motobe fall off to an extreme degree. He's highlighted as a monster in the early rounds, but then outright gets destroyed and loses against this sumo guy, who we end up seeing many manga series later in the sumo arc again, but still this was quite the humiliation and low-key shouldn't have happened considering what Motobe had done at prior points in the story and what we see him do in the future. However, after that slight L, we have the incredible rise of Motobe for the future of the story. He returns again at the end of the prisoner arc on the likes of Yanagi, someone who could be argued as the strongest prisoner, or at the very least the one with the most dangerous techniques. Most people in the fandom argue between Doyle, Spec and Yanagi for the top 3. The ranking could really go any way, but the arguments for Yanagi are definitely there, and this fight is where we see what Motobe is capable of when he uses weapons, absolutely destroying the poison hand user, so much so that bro couldn't even land a single attack on him, and had Yujiro actually show some respect to Motobe, that had him stunned, and of course resulted in Yujiro giving Yanagi that slap, as more so redemption for what Yanagi did to Baki potentially. But this scene was pretty wild and was many people's first introduction to Motobe if you're an anime only, which if you still are, get on reading that manga, particularly Grapple Baki, the first series, where we have the initial rise of Motobe. However, after this scene, we don't see him for quite some time. He doesn't appear during the Cairo arc, Ali Jr., Oliver's prison arc, or even the Pickle. Maybe he has a few scenes, but no impactful fights. The only thing we learn from him is during the time skip after the father-son fight, where we see that Motobe has gone up to the mountains to train, which brings us to the Musashi Miyamoto arc, where we have the incredible rise of Motobe in the story. So the first thing we see is him having a sparring match with the likes of Retsu. This is without the use of weapons, just hand-to-hand combat, where we see that Motobe is on an even playing field with Retsu. However, he stated himself that Retsu is indeed stronger than him, meaning when it comes to martial arts versus martial arts, the Chinese master should be ranked above him. However, you could argue Motobe was about to get more serious if he wasn't knocked out by Kaku to stop this fight from going too far. After that, we see him completely outplay Baki with the use of weapons, showing his absolute domination in this form, with him also pulling up on Yujiro to reveal to him that he's going to protect the ogre from Musashi Miyamoto, and actually escape from a bloodlusted ogre who was going to rip him apart. Something not many characters will be able to do, highlighting what weapons and prepped up Motobe is capable of, with him cucking the fight between Yujiro and Musashi Miyamoto, saving him to a degree. Some people argue that Yujiro would have been able to survive the attack, but that's up to interpretation, and you could even say this is one of, if not the most impressive speed feat we've ever seen in Baki. As during the early stages of this fight, we got this statement which people love to wank in various verse battle settings for the likes of Yujiro and the legendary samurai. But then when Motobe cut the fight short, this was the strongest version of Musashi in the fight, being able to slice up demon back Yujiro potentially with various slashes if the ogre was still using the demon back, which isn't known but is likely the case. So Motobe is without a doubt a monster and survives direct attacks from the ogre, and is highlighted as someone strong by Musashi and Yujiro as well, different to many other characters. But his rise doesn't stop there. Of course, we have various moments of him fodderizing his students such as Gaia, but the big fight we get to see before he faces Musashi is against Jack Hanma, who has returned after facing defeat from Pickle in previous arcs, taller than ever before. This isn't a state where he has his Gaodao martial art in current Baki, but is without a doubt stronger than what he was when he faced Pickle. And this fight is similar to the previous, where Motobe wants to fight Jack so he doesn't get himself killed by Musashi if he gets the chance to fight him, which may have actually happened considering who Jack is. Key things to take note throughout this fight is Motobe was beyond prepped and does in fact show a lot of respect to the Hanma in these various panels, something I've broken down many times. And if you take a look at this panel, this is the exact same move Jack recently used on Pickle in the current Baki manga, which is pretty cool to see. But the main takeaway from this fight is that weapons up Motobe can pretty much deal with anyone, and that's exactly what we see in his next clash against Musashi Miyamoto. Before that begins, he pretty much saves Pickle with the Dino Boy running to his hands, and then shocks the world by defeating the legendary samurai. Key points of this fight is that Motobe admits that he's really no match for a serious Musashi and could have died at many points if Musashi wanted to. However, with all that said, the Sword Demon showed insane respect to Motobe, and all things considered, he did in fact lose to the prepped up, jujutsu, weaponed up Mad Lad. Thus, that's the last time we've seen Motobe have a fight, but his story in Baki has not concluded. We see him as a main commentator in later parts, such as during the Baki and Musashi fight to conclude that arc, and then recently in Baki he's been called out by Jack amongst many others for a rematch in the future of the current Baki manga. Something that's really going to reveal where Motobe ranks currently in the story, but one thing for sure is that without weapons he doesn't break into this top 10, but with weapons he could go even higher. That's why I believe rank 7 for right now is a very good spot. Now rank 6 is Biscuit Oliva, who has had a very up and down road throughout the Baki story. His introduction has pretty much 2 points that pretty much have him viewed the same. The first is in the original older anime for Grappler Baki, where we see Oliva have an exchange with 16-year-old Yujiro. This is where they can be viewed as equal, or Oliva being strong enough that Yujiro at this point would have too much trouble in really defeating him if they were to fight all out, at least in these circumstances during the Vietnam War. For example, Yujiro says this: "It would be a waste to eat you now. I'll save the fun for later." However, this is an anime only scene, so take it with I guess a grain of salt. When it comes to the manga and his first appearance in that was during the Most Evil Inmate saga, where he's shown respected by Yujiro and way above the prisoners without a doubt, and probably Baki at this time considering his performance. Then the next time we see him is in the Rattai tournament arc, where he has his fight against Ron, which resulted in the legendary hand in pockets match. Something that of course had Oliver's victory, but demonstrated that this Kaio was very strong. This is either due to Oliver not performing the best, or he's just stronger than most of the others. What do you think down below? This was also another arc where Yujiro very clearly respected Oliver, and at this point in the story, a lot of people actually had Mr. Unchained around the top 3 strongest in the story, the same caliber as someone like Kaku who recently fought Yujiro, but this is beginning to change in the following arcs. We had Baki defeat Ali Jr. and call out his father for their second big fight in the story, choosing to go to America and fight Oliver for some final training, or perhaps to truly test himself now. During that arc, we see Oliver defeat the newly introduced Che Guevara in I guess a decently close but goofy fight, leading into Baki's turn to face the muscled up beast. This clash makes something very clear that has already kind of been set up in previous fights, especially when you look at Oliver vs Doyle as an example. But it's clear Oliver is very limited when it comes to techniques, and when one has superior abilities or other means to fight, they do decently well against him, even if stat wise they're not really close at all, meaning Oliva takes more damage than really a lot of other fighters would do against pretty much the lower tier characters, due just to relying on pure stats rather than pretty much skill like a lot of the more so martial artists in the series. However, something very important is this is the first time we see his ball technique, a very simple ability in concept, but something that is incredibly overpowered, and I will discuss this in more detail later on. Overall, we see that Demonbat Baki at this point is capable of defeating Oliva with raw power alone, giving him his first defeat in the series, and revealing how much Baki is growing at this point, putting Oliva naturally lower on the hierarchy now, which continues to occur with Pickle being introduced in the next arc. Strangely and unfortunately, we never had Oliva fight Pickle, only Baki thinking about them fighting, coming to this conclusion. Nothing that crazy, but he does question the outcome of this fight, which at this point in the story is very good for Oliva narrative wise. However, something right after Baki vs Pickle isn't good for Oliva at all. A fight against Yujiro, or at first a strength test that he loses, and then for what we see, it seems like Oliva is completely outclassed, can't really do anything, meaning the times that he was once regarded at the same level of Yujiro are long gone. Then we have a few more arcs where Oliva does not fight, including the Musashi arc. Of course, he wouldn't have stood a chance if he faced the samurai, however he could have had I guess some impressive showings or some demonstrations of improvements to compare to the other characters, but he didn't get the chance to show anything, with him then having two fights against Sukune in the Suma arc. The first was viewed as the ultimate downfall for Oliva, having received 3 losses in a row in the story, and destroyed by Sukune. However, this was due to a few reasons. First is Oliva being way too overconfident and underestimating Sukune, a major aspect of his character, and of course not knowing what Sukune is capable of and what his pretty much broken abilities consist of. He was shown capable of damaging the sumo boy with this punch, but in the end fell into his trap and got his back broken. From there he went into rehabilitation with the doctor, returning with most likely a buff, facing a Sukune who recently faced defeat by Yujiro and Jack Hanma, which resulted in a loss of a finger and some other injuries, which was still showing on his body when Oliva pulled up for the rematch. In the end, Oliva was able to win this fight without much trouble and was able to show the might of his ball technique again, demonstrating its OP nature further. Not one-shotting Sukune like it did for Baki, but clearly weakening him to a high degree, allowing him to knock out the big boy with the next punch. As a whole, Oliva won this fight without much difficulty or taking really any damage, and I would honestly rank him above Sukune with this performance. Yes, it's possible Sukune is severely weakened from the injuries, however Oliva did so well, and when he uses techniques like the ball one, he seems to pretty much dominate in every degree, so Oliva I would actually rank above Sukune after all this, especially now as I don't think we're going to see Sukune anytime soon. He's also a character that has some very impressive feats throughout Baki, and while falling off for quite some time, I do think his redemption is going to continue. I would like to see more fights in the future of Baki, whether it's against Jack, against Hanayama or someone else, just to provide a definitive scale, as Oliva hasn't really fought anyone outside of the Hanmas, at least those that are relevant right now as well. But if you want to be as fair as possible, between rank 9 and 6, you could say these are interchangeable spots. Now coming in 5th is Pickle, who for you Baki right-hand readers is not in a good position right now. However, that cannot ignore or remove what he's done in the story, which is insane. The first thing I want to mention is his raw strength, which is likely still number 1 in the verse, with his exchange with Yujiro kinda proving this, and since then when it comes to raw physical power, it hasn't been disproven since. We have Pickle introduced to the main cast of characters, leading into Yujiro approaching the beast and offering his challenge in the form of a strength test. As it begins, Pickle is fairly casual, with Yujiro beginning to add his force, resulting in Pickle to begin his dinosaur comparisons, viewing Yujiro as a T-Rex, the strongest opponent he faced in his time, causing Pickle to begin unleashing his power as he's now excited, with the motion shown in these panels and in the anime here, and Yujiro as a response to flip Pickle on the ground, then making a statement that is very controversial. Whether Yujiro used the trick on Pickle or Pickle used the trick on Yujiro. Now that we have the anime scene for this fight, we can finally end this debate. This is the screenshot here. Yujiro said that Pickle made me pull a move on him. Meaning Pickle, when it comes to raw strength, forced Yujiro in this exchange to use a move on him, referring to techniques, to pretty much save himself from being embarrassed. And then we have his durability, which could also be number one in the verse, considering the beating he's taken from various characters and never really falling. This includes Baki Hanma, Katsumi, who was sacrificing his own limbs to deal damage, Musashi Miyamoto with a sword, who in the end didn't actually take out Pickle, was just so strong bro had to run away. And then most recently in Baki, we have the third clash between him and Jack, where for what we know, Jack is the winner of the fight. Some things could change in the future of the manga, however, as you're watching this section, you probably know the result, Jack was the winner. Something that has resulted in many fans to scream that Pickle was nerfed. Something that of course is a possibility but very unlikely. It's more so the case, Jack's growth in power with his new martial art and finally completing himself as a fighter has allowed him to transcend into the true top tiers alongside Baki and Yujiro, who, if they were to fight Pickle at this point, would also destroy him in any rematch, as even in the past, in the Pickle arc, Baki with techniques is able to absolutely dominate the Dino Boy. This is just consistent for Jack. However, depending on what happens in some other fights between current Jack and the other main characters, it's possible we could be having others ranked above Pickle. However, until we see that, the Dino Boy is without a doubt above them, the physically strongest, most durable, with the potential to keep on improving, subtle hints in the past of developing techniques like Aiki, him now speaking in the Baki world, and probably many more things, so make sure to stay tuned and subscribe to the channel, bringing us to the top 4. So the characters in this top 4, if you haven't assumed already, is Yujiro Hanma, Baki, Jack and Musashi Miyamoto. But what is the ranking of these guys? Particularly between Musashi and Jack. Recently, since Jack's return, he's claimed glorious dubs over and over, with his ultimate goal of defeating Yujiro Hanma, his father. But before that, it's likely the case he's going to face Baki and possibly defeat him. So throughout this remaining section, I'll be going over everything you need to know about these 4, what they've done past the anime, and overall how strong they are in the Baki world, to get a definitive understanding of the current ranking, or the ranking which is likely to occur in the future of the story. Musashi Miyamoto has changed Baki forever. Even now, after his soul was removed from him, we still have him being talked about. For an example, during the Yujiro and Sukune fight, the ogre landed this huge punch sending Sukune flying. However, the sumo boy did not fall, leading Tokugawa to say the following: "Were Musashi here, I imagine he would have exclaimed, 'How mighty that temple of flesh?'" Meaning, according to him, Musashi would have actually praised Sukune here, once again putting Musashi on the standard of power at the top of the verse. Then in the most recent manga series, Baki Rahen, the Jack arc, in chapter 1 we got this. Tokugawa is talking to the sword master, saying he's going to have a one-on fight with both people being fully armed, with the guy thinking whether or not it's Musashi Miyamoto again, as if he didn't know, at the start of the Musashi arc, this was the person he first faced in the series. But of course he was referring to Jack, but also states, no, we're not going through that mess again. What mess is Tokugawa talking about? Going back to the start of the Musashi arc, every character was pretty much bored with life. Most of them were still training to get stronger and stronger after seeing the crazy clash between Yujiro and Baki, the moment before the start of the Musashi arc. Even having the likes of Hanayama pull up on Yujiro to have a clash due to once again this boredom, leading Tokugawa to have Musashi cloned and the original soul put into his body, putting a nuke on the Baki-verse, and what happened after that. Characters dying in the form of Retsu, everyone getting beat up, and of course his clash against Yujiro Hanma. Let's break down a few moments of Musashi's fight against the strongest creature alive. First, his imagination cuts didn't actually work on Yujiro as shown here at the start of the fight, something that was kinda nagging a lot of the cast, even doing some damage to the likes of Baki. After a few exchanges, Yujiro actually pulled out his demon back in this fight, something a lot of people actually missed, resulting in this combo where Yujiro was actually able to drop the master. This actually resulted in Musashi to evolve his fighting style even more, the next step of evolution in my two swords under heaven style, his swordless style, discarding his sword and actually landing some cuts on Yujiro here. Whether or not he has his demon bag activated right now is kinda unknown, as in all the panels after he dropped Musashi first, we don't actually get to see it fully clear or activated in any way. So it could be the case that Yujiro deactivated or just went away considering he dropped him. But that would be a little wacky, and a similar thing kinda happened during his fight against Baki. We had that whole scene where Yujiro pulled out the demon back and started beating up his son, and then the arrival of Yujiro Hanma, where we didn't really get to see that much emphasis on the demon back. However, for the sake of the story, I'm just going to say Yujiro still had that amp from activating it prior and still had it pretty much out. Another strange thing about their fight is when Yujiro activated his demon back, it didn't actually blow off his shirt. It was kind of more of a quick release due to him actually being in danger. Wasn't this cool badass scene? Yujiro was threatened by Musashi. Then of course the controversial moment where Motobe jumped in front of the next slice that could have actually done major damage to the likes of Yujiro. We got to see in the earlier slashes that he was able to cut him and do some damage, meaning if this was the hit it would definitely be able to slice Yujiro, but was it going to hit? We probably will never find out. What do you think? Let me know down below. But after that as well, when Yujiro was raging beating up Motobe, Musashi was able to leave him stunned and stop him, concluding their fight. Someone was able to stop Yujiro from going on a rampage, that being Musashi Miyamoto, something we don't really see in the story even now. Musashi was such a menace, he killed various police officers, a main character in Retsu, he was about to kill Hanayama if Baki didn't step in, he had the opportunity to kill Baki at the start of the arc. Likewise with Doppo Orochi, Motobe claims that he could have been killed by him multiple times throughout their fight. I wouldn't be surprised if he sliced straight through Gaia in this exchange if he wanted to as well. And based on his final clash against Baki, the way he was getting disrespected at multiple moments, I'm guessing Musashi would have actually gone for the kill if the fight continued. Thus, the boredom all the characters felt after the crazy clash between father and son was no longer there. Musashi pretty much saved the Baki series in multiple ways throughout this arc, and was sent back to where he came from, not by losing a fight against Yujiro Baki, but the way he actually got there. Tokugawa thought it was enough and it was time to send him back, also claiming that he could return in the future, perhaps when the main cast of Baki characters are ready, meaning when all of them get stronger, which has been and will continue occurring, making the chance of Musashi becoming more outdated possible. However, since his continued mention has occurred in the story and narrative provided with him, I doubt he will ever be considered outside of the top 5 in the strongest ranking, with many fans still to this day ranking him at 1 or 2, but for me, 4th is where he needs to go, considering the progression of the story past his time. Therefore, coming in 3rd is Jack Hanma now, Someone who's going to continue proving himself and will fight both Baki and Yujiro during this arc, providing the narrative argument, but I need to break down his martial art as a key factor I see a lot of people disrespecting still. Jack Hanma and his Gaudo is demonstrating absolute supremacy in the Baki universe. Jack is now biting people with skill, strategy, and of course pure insanity to rise through the ranks and achieve his original goal, something at a very young age to become the strongest creature alive. Different to Baki's original goal or purpose, to defeat his father, who just happened to be the strongest creature, Jack wants that title and is willing to do anything to achieve it, training so hard as a child, it only ends when he passes out, and is now building his way up to face both characters now recognized as the strongest creatures. Everything about that and Gaudo will be revealed in today's video. Throughout the story of Baki, Jack has been biting people since the start, using it for the first time in round 2 of the maximum tournament, at least for what we saw, in such a way no one knew what he was doing to make his opponent bleed, until it was fully revealed with all its glory. Jack continues to implement it in the later rounds, even with holds back then, with it already being established that his bite strength is insane, via this coconut flex he did for whatever reason, and also biting as a counter, as shown in the Goki match, which also involved him holding onto Goki's arm with his teeth to land various combos, something I hope he does again. He also landed a bite on Baki that hit an artery, resulting in the protagonist to only have 3 minutes to win that fight. The loss of blood victory approach for Jack pretty much first occurred in this fight, something he's now using in current Baki Rahen. However, this is where we run into a problem with his biting and the downfall of this strategy. When trying to break out of Baki's demon back amped hold, Jack's teeth shatter, proceeding to face defeat. He doesn't seem to use biting in the following 2 fights in the later arcs, namely against Sikorsky and Ali Jr., focusing on his body with his height surgeries and increasing his strength. He did however flex his biting ability and reaction speed in this nail scene. After that, Jack's biting faces a direct defeat, losing in the almighty kiss clash with Pickle, and getting his entire face and teeth destroyed multiple times in that long-lasting battle, and kinda again with his depressing cry. Jack proceeds to reach his maximum height while also maintaining all speed and strength he's gained, meaning my man is an absolute monster now. Wanting to face Musashi Miyamoto, however Motobe is in his way. This is where his attempted bite was prepared for by Motobe, the prep time king, resulting in the 3rd time all of Jack's teeth were destroyed, and perhaps in the most severe way or absolute way in this situation, making it seem like Jack should just give up on biting and focus on something else perhaps, as even later in the Motobe fight, he almost won with his rage-induced striking alone, not needing his biting. However, Jack believes in the might of biting, disappearing from the series for some time, going overseas, returning in Baki Dao 2018 chapter 105. Looking more buff than ever before, however he's still the same height as previously, now having titanium teeth and claiming he's made major improvements to the power of his bite. So much so his face actually changed somewhat. I guess this is where the Demon Jaw fan theory came from. The main reason for the new titanium teeth is claimed as due to Motobe destroying all of them, and then we have the most important aspect. Jack decided he wanted to devote himself to biting and made this his martial art pursuit, traveling around the world to learn and create what is now known as Gaudo, the way of the biting. Something that now in chapter 8 of Baki Rahen has resulted in Jack to have a talk with Yujiro. Yes, with Yujiro. Something all of us still can't believe happened this early, with a few key reveals occurring in their conversation. First is Jack claiming that his abilities have finally caught up to his body. As I mentioned earlier, during the Musashi arc, Jack claimed he had reached the tallest he wants to be while having the strength and speed required with that body, meaning the main weakness was more so his skill or perhaps his biting that was exploited in the previous fights. Now that is starting to fade, with a reminder from Yujiro that yes, he's getting there, but not perfect, confirming that Jack will continue to improve, with the ogre actually respecting Jack as his son now, claiming that in the history of those who've sought to be the strongest, you alone have set foot into the true world of biting. You have a rare purity, truly highlighting how far Jack has come now and the might of his Gaodao. But let's bring it back a little bit. Before the Sukune fight, Jack also confirmed it's a long way from perfection, clearly getting closer with every fight we see Jack have, and the more we see Gaodao used. He views biting as mankind's ultimate weapon, as everyone can use it to do damage, such as women and children, which is brought up many times when talking about biting. However, Jack hasn't just made his bite strength more powerful, his knowledge of weak points or vital spots is highlighted when Jack was looking at this Giga Dog. Also during one moment in the Sukune fight, this X-ray like vision, which could be similar to Yujiro's ability where he's able to see the weakness of everyone just naturally, they just appear in his eyes. Jack most likely had a degree of knowledge back during the maximum tournament, as shown with a few of the bites landing in vital positions, but now he probably knows it all, a full understanding of how to use his Gaodao or how to use his biting, getting into a better position to land them. Side note, I love how serious Jack is about biting now, putting fear into the Giga Dog, claiming that he's only an amateur of biting, likewise for lions compared to this Hanma. Additionally, when it comes to training, we've seen the Baki cast do some fairly interesting things throughout the series, just take Baki's imagination. For Jack, it's mainly just been him going to the extremes, but for his Gaodao, he actually sleeps like this and doesn't consider this his real training. The lifting of insane weight with his jaw is the good stuff. Perhaps with a few sets of like 8 to 15. I guess that's what regular people would think. I hope you didn't think that for Jack. He does over 400 reps in one go, most likely until he falls unconscious like he's always been doing. But now it's time to go over his showings of Gaodao in action in the series so far. The real stuff that highlights how monstrous this martial art truly is. And honestly, the first time we saw it fully used is still one of the most impressive. Sukune landed a direct strike on Jack's face as a counter to Jack's initial punch, and lost one of his fingers in that quick instant, claiming that this is the instinct of Gaodao. If you touch him, Jack bites, so it's better to stay away and even not fight him if you want to be safe, something that connects to various moments in his Kosho fight that I'll go over shortly. Sukune right away understands the danger of Jack. While biting may seem quite simple and the attack used by the weak, but Jack uses it while wielding a gigantic technical arsenal, which allows him to quickly take his opponent out in various situations and moments. Any chance he has, Jack is able to land the bite, as shown when he attacks Sukune. Just getting close to him when he's serious is enough for Jack, occurring again throughout the fight as Sukune lands a kick, with the biting cyborg also using strategy when coming into fights now, while also now showing the capability to smoothly transition between striking, defensive means, and his biting even during a non-stop clash, highlighting that this is a true martial art now. With it also being important to take what Jack considers as a victory. It's not simply who is standing over the other when the fight is over, it's pretty much who is still conscious enough to continue fighting. The loss of blood his opponents need to deal with puts Jack in a winning situation the more he prolongs a fight. And also, when he calls out the fighters, it's clear that he wants to prove the superior nature of his Gaodo, why the biting martial art is better than everything else, whether it be Gaia's military close quarters combat or what the karate masters use. Jack's biting represents him willing to do anything for the sake of winning, No shame at all. Any advantage you can get, he'll take it. That is biting to Jack. So yes, you can claim I'm overhyping Jack as always, but just read the manga and you'll see his continued greatness. Now the top two, Baki and Yujiro. You probably know the ranking already, but I'll provide a breakdown of their power and abilities to complete this giga video for all these top tier characters. Current Baki Hanma in the manga is much stronger compared to the most recent anime season fighting his father, and of course compared to his clash with Kengan facing Tokita Oma. Demonstrating new techniques and abilities, proving to everyone that he's worthy of being considered a strongest creature now. Additionally, there was one moment in Baki where he imagined he was fighting Yujiro Hanma, where the ogre in imagination form hit Baki so hard people thought an earthquake was occurring. Just take a second to think about that and how wild Baki's training has become. Up next we have the Musashi arc. So throughout that he has two fights against the legendary samurai. During the first one we see Baki use a light speed jab to drop him. The panel in question has Baki state that his jab is faster than the speed of light, with the narrator at the bottom of the page supporting this by saying Baki starts the fight up again with a jab faster than light. How will Musashi react? And as we know, he was knocked out from this attack. But there's a few issues with this we need to consider. First, if you were to show this to someone, many would agree and go with the idea that Baki is indeed light speed. However, there's some important context to go over. This was the last panel of a chapter, with the very next one beginning with a flashback of Yujiro explaining stuff to young Baki, such as how people say stuff like fast as lightning, Mach Punch as being a way to describe their technique speed, and how these are nothing more than simple words, leading people with the context to just consider Baki's claim here as hyperbole, meaning it was just an exaggeration that shouldn't be taken serious. But consider this. In the flashback where we see Yujiro saying this, it seems like Baki is understanding what his father is saying, like many other things in the story. So why would he use this claim if it isn't true is a question to consider, particularly when we know the Mach Punch speed is true in early Baki, and they have feats even during the Musashi arc that are quite insane compared to any other point in the series, with ways to calculate speed not quite at light speed, but pretty high in the broader perspective. So of course, let me know down below what you think about this. Now during their second fight, we get to see Baki's evolution of his cockroach based attacks, resulting in this where he turned 3 blows into something many would view as only one, hitting the face, solar plexus and genitals simultaneously, which begins with Baki using the regular cockroach dash in combination with a flicker jab and some other stuff, resulting in Musashi to be rendered unconscious straight away, who as previously mentioned has some pretty wild speed feats and even some durability ones prior to this fight with Baki. And now the other main ability fully shown is this form of brain reading. It was initially revealed during Baki's fight with his father, but this is the fight where it's fully explained and we have outright confirmation that Baki is a master at using it. Musashi Miyamoto is the first to pull it out, saying immediately before the moment you moved, the signal I received from you allowed me to move in advance. Motobe proceeded to explain that he does read his opponent during a fight, but even he cannot reach into the brain, claiming that Baki and Miyamoto are having a brain reading battle here. They're reading for the moment before the mental decision to act is even made, with them using this ability to attack before the opponent's thoughts are even conscious. Don't know how to explain it fully, but pretty wild stuff going on. Now in the next manga, known as the Sumo arc, he has a little clash with Doppo Orochi to learn about sumo, nothing that serious. A clash with Sukune showing some dominance. The small sumo boy fight with Baki winning with his superior speed, and then he's fully called out by Sukune for the finale of the arc, where we truly see how much of a monster Baki has become. It begins with him being insanely relaxed, sleeping before the fight, and going out to the arena still wearing his regular clothing, showing how confident he is and how at this point Sukune isn't even a challenge for him. As a reminder, throughout the Sumo arc, Sukune was able to defeat Oliva around the start. He demonstrated his superiority over the other sumo fighters. He got kinda destroyed by Yujiro, but Tokugawa made the claim that Musashi would even respect Sukune. He had a very close fight with Jack, where Jack claimed victory and destroyed him in every way possible. But even with all of that, the biting cyborg showed respect towards Sukune and even said that he could have been defeated if he landed this blow without missing one of his fingers and all the other damage he had sustained. Coming back to Baki facing full power Sukune, saying he's gonna take Baki out in like 1 second instantly, who's already gone for a warm up for the fight, begins with him attacking straight away. 4 seconds later, Sukune is inches away from landing his powerful blow directly on Baki, who as a response has been slowly walking with his hands still in his pocket, releasing them to perform a wrist strike on Sukune's chin, landing before Sukune can, and use the slipping boxing technique via turning his head with Sukune's blow for the purpose of dispersing the impact of the attack, knocking out Sukune, taking no damage himself, and winning the fight within 9 seconds. This is the guy who's pretty much been the protagonist for the last 100 chapters, just got done like that at the end of the arc by Baki. I think everyone needs to respect Baki's power without a doubt, and that is pretty much the last time we've seen him fight. In the current Baki manga, known as Baki Rahen or the Jack arc, he has been called out by his brother for a future fight. Therefore, the long-awaited rematch between Baki Hanma and Jack Hanma, both stronger than they've ever been before, is something very hyped to look forward to in the Baki series. After Yujiro Hanma faced his son Baki and once again demonstrated that the ogre is objectively the strongest, outright tanking Baki's final blows and destroying him with the almighty hug, while also respecting how much the little demon has grown, with his ability to make Yujiro believe in his imagination, granting him the title of strongest creature as well, alongside this being the conclusion of both of their character arcs as claimed by Itagaki in this interview. However, this very clearly was not the end. Yujiro proceeded to clash with Hanayama, get trolled by Motobe, have a legendary face-off with the real Musashi Miyamoto, gets an understanding of what sumo is made of with exchanges against Sukune and Keiha, meets some new US presidents, receives some very concerning reveals in the story, is currently thicker than ever before, gives Jack respect alongside a whole dining scene between these two, which is definitively set up their fight for the future of this arc, with the narrative still providing Yujiro as the number one, the strongest without question. But here is a quick breakdown of all his power abilities which backs up all of this. Yujiro Hanma is someone who grows stronger every day. Everyone and everything yields to the strongest. He was able to stop an earthquake with a single punch. His aura can shake an entire skyscraper and warp the world around him. Even Baki's imagination version of his father hit him so hard people thought an earthquake occurred. It's claimed many times that he's above every weapon, which even includes nukes. Getting struck by lightning that lingers doesn't even make him flinch, and if he wanted to, he could dodge it at point blank range. Many claim he mastered every martial art that exists in this world, and if needed, he can copy techniques of others. The ogre wields the ability to attack through one's durability, negate damage from others, and various forms of redirection if needed. However, he often just outright tanks everyone's attacks. Furthermore, it's stated and shown that he can see the weakness of everyone in a way that it just appears in his eyes. When Yujiro was 16, he entered battlefields around the world without the use of weapons and always came out on top, becoming known as the weaponless weapon of the East and of course the strongest creature in the world, a title he still holds to this day after 30 years of Baki chapters, which is currently over 1,000 more than One Piece, with no one defeating him when it comes to strength to this day, even when it comes to being the most masculine, as his male hormone is so high, he technically views everyone else in the world as female, Yes, this is canon to the manga. Furthermore, did you know when Yujiro Hanma was a baby, his screams were so loud and powerful, it made an entire mansion tremble. Some like to claim that he's above time itself thanks to this panel, but if you look at the story as well, he meets every new US president to sign the alliance with them, as Yujiro is above everyone, even entire nations. But when it comes to the timeline of the Baki world, it hasn't even been 2 years since around the start. So perhaps they're right, and since Yujiro is the strongest, the number one in the Baki world, wouldn't that mean he's above feats from other characters? For example, Pickle possibly surviving a blow from the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, at least being kinda close in distance. Various speed feats from Musashi, Miyamoto and Baki that are absolutely insane, and just other stuff that the wild Baki cast tends to do, which has Yujiro above by default. People have done calculations that has the ogre's raw power above large town level and speed faster than massively hypersonic, but there's more. Yujiro can amplify all these stats with the use of the demon back, a very mysterious ability of the Hanma family that pretty much shows the characters get stronger when it's activated.